Erin, what's your deal? Some kind of college dropout? Helen's sneer was unmistakable. I tightened my grip on the coffee mug, my heart pounding. Actually, Mrs. Bradley, I never went to college. I had to start working right after high school. Oh, high school? Look at that, Luke. Your wife's barely educated, Helen laughed, casting a glance at her son. Luke's eyes, though, looked anywhere but at me. I took a deep breath, focusing on the warmth of the coffee mug in my hands. Helen's words stabbed like icy needles. I forced myself to remain calm, remembering the determined path that had led me here, even against the odds of my modest upbringing. Luke and I had met 2 years ago at a high-end corporate event. He was handsome, well-spoken, and came from a world far removed from mine. Our connection had been immediate and intense. Everything felt like a whirlwind. Dinners, late-night talks, spontaneous trips. Luke had proposed within 6 months, and I had accepted, not realizing the storm Helen would bring into our lives. We'd only been married for a month when I discovered just how venomous Helen could be. Tonight was our first family dinner post-honeymoon at the Bradley mansion. I'd hoped to make a good impression, but it was clear Helen had different plans. Mother, can we drop it? Luke finally said, his voice strained. He didn't meet my eyes. Helen ignored him, her gaze trapping me like a spotlight. Erin, dear, how do you expect to navigate our social circles? They're not like those back in... Where did you grow up again? I swallowed hard, feeling the lump in my throat. I grew up in Springfield, and I believe hard work and kindness can navigate any circle. Springfield? Helen echoed with a dismissive chuckle. That's quaint. She sipped her wine, smirking over the rim of her glass. I set my mug down with more force than intended, causing the contents to slosh over the edge. Luke winced. Excuse me, I said and left the table, heading for the kitchen. The humiliation was unbearable. I needed a moment to collect myself before I said something I'd regret. In the kitchen, I leaned against the counter, staring blankly at the marble surface. The memories of my struggles rushed back, working double shifts right after high school to support my family, my mom's hospital bills, the bills piling up, the sacrifices. Was this all my life would amount to? Continually being judged for circumstances beyond my control? Erin? Luke's voice broke my thoughts. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, hands in his pockets. Concern etched his features, but I couldn't ignore the frustration behind his eyes. Why didn't you defend me? I asked softly, barely keeping my voice steady. Luke sighed, running a hand through his hair. Erin, I'm sorry. You know how my mother is. She's set in her ways. I crossed my arms, the knot in my stomach tightening. That's no excuse, Luke. If we're a team, we need to support each other, especially in moments like this. I know, believe me. But she's my mother, Erin. It's complicated. Complicated. That word resounded in our relationship far too often. Still, I loved Luke, and I believed we could navigate these stormy waters together. Let's get through dinner, then we'll talk, I said, determined to regain my composure. We returned to the dining room. Helen's eyes sparkled with a mix of triumph and curiosity, but I refused to let her win. I could feel the weight of the future pressing down on us, but one thing was clear. I wasn't backing down. With this resolve, I took my seat, lifting my fork with a steady hand. Shall we continue? I asked, meeting Helen's gaze head-on. The air crackled with unresolved tension, but beneath it, a fire burned bright within me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready. Moving in with Helen was Luke's idea. For her health, he said. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house, an old colonial mansion, loomed over us as we lugged my suitcases through its grand doorway. Welcome home, Helen said with a tight-lipped smile. Her eyes flicked to my suitcase. I see you've brought everything? Thanks for having me, Mrs. Bradley, I said, forcing a smile. As soon as Luke left for work, Helen's true colors showed. Here, she said, handing me a list. These are the chores for today. The floors won't clean themselves. I stared at her, bewildered. But you have a housekeeper. She's off today. And since you don't have a job, keep yourself busy, she said, her tone dripping with condescension. Resigned, I took the list and started cleaning. The vacuum roared to life, drowning out my simmering frustration. Scrubbing the marble countertops, I reminded myself this was just temporary until Helen's health stabilized, or so I hoped. By evening, Luke returned, his tie askew, wariness etched on his face. How was your day? He asked, pecking me on the cheek. Busy, I replied, glancing at Helen, who sat perched in her armchair, smug satisfaction oozing from her demeanor. Well, I'm glad you're here to help, Luke said, oblivious to the silent war raging between his mother and me. Days turned into weeks, and Helen's subtle disdain became increasingly blatant. "Erin, could you not make dinner tonight? I'm sure Luke would prefer something edible," she said one evening, eyeing the roast I'd prepared. Luke looked up from his plate, his brow furrowing. "Mom, that's not fair. Erin's roast is fine." "Fine?" Helen laughed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Bless your heart, Luke. You've lowered your standards." I met Luke's eyes, searching for backup. He shrugged, defeated. "Maybe we should order in," he suggested quietly. The next few weeks followed a similar pattern. Helen's demands grew, her insults sharper. Yet Luke remained disconcertingly neutral, too disengaged or too fearful to stand up against her. One afternoon, I found Helen in Luke's office on the phone. "Yes, we'll add the new accounts under Luke's name," she said, not noticing me. My chest tightened at the realization. She was setting up financial plans, excluding me entirely. "Everything all right?" I asked, forcing cheerfulness into my voice when she hung up. Helen spun around, her expression hardening. "Don't you have something to do, Erin?" She snapped, shooing me away like a pesky fly. Later, Luke and I were in our bedroom when I brought it up. "Luke, why does your mom keep financial information from me? Shouldn't we be making decisions together?" Luke sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Erin, Mom likes control. She's always managed the finances. It's easier this way." "Easier for who?" I countered, frustration evident. "We're married. We should be a team." Luke looked at me, a shadow of guilt crossing his features. "I'll talk to her, okay? Just give it time." Time, it seemed, was all I had. Each day felt like walking on eggshells, Helen's shadow looming over every corner of the house. And Luke, too entangled in his mother's demands, barely seemed to notice the growing chasm between us. One evening, after yet another heated argument about household chores, Helen cornered me in the kitchen. "You really think you can come into my home and change things?" she said, her voice low and threatening. "I'm not trying to change anything," I replied, my voice unwavering. "Just trying to live here with some respect." "Respect?" Helen sneered. "You'll never have it here. Remember your place, Erin, or you might find yourself misplaced." As she left the kitchen, I felt a cold resolve harden within me. Living under Helen's shadow was suffocating, but I wouldn't back down. I was more determined than ever to find a way to stand my ground. One morning I woke to find Luke buzzing with excitement. "Erin, you won't believe it," he said, his eyes shining. "What is it?" I asked, trying to match his enthusiasm. "Mom and I are planning a trip to New Orleans next month. It's always been her dream to visit, and she's finally feeling well enough," he said, his joy palpable. I paused, confused. "That sounds wonderful, Luke. But what about me?" Luke's smile faltered. "It's just a mother-son trip. You understand, right?" Before I could respond, Helen waltzed into the room, her face aglow with satisfaction. "Isn't it marvelous, Erin? Luke and I are finally getting some quality time together. We've been planning this for ages." I glanced at Luke, hoping for some semblance of acknowledgement. Instead, he looked to Helen, then back to me, beaming. "It's going to be great." My throat tightened. "Sounds nice," I managed to say, forcing a smile. They were dismissing me like an afterthought. As they talked about their itinerary, I busied myself in the kitchen, feeling more sidelined with each passing minute. That evening, as Luke and I settled into bed, I broached the subject again. "Luke, why wasn't I included in the trip plans?" He turned to face me, looking weary. "Erin, Mom really needs this. She's been through a lot. Can't you understand?" "It's not about understanding. It's about being left out," I said, my voice trembling. "We're married. Shouldn't we be doing things together?" "Don't make this about you," he snapped. "This trip is for her health and happiness, not about some slight against you." I pulled the covers up, feeling the sting of his words. "Fine," I whispered, turning my back to him. The next day, Helen's requests grew even more demanding. "Erin, could you handle these bills? And make sure you organize Luke's files," she said, handing me a towering stack of folders. I took them without a word. As I went through the bills, I noticed several extravagant charges, clothing, dining, and other luxuries charged under my name. My frustration mounted. It was like Helen was deliberately trying to sabotage me. That evening, I confronted Luke. "We need to talk about these charges, Luke. They're all in my name." He frowned. "Mom has been handling those. I'm sure there's an explanation." "There better be, because this can't continue," I said, handing him the bills. Luke skimmed through them, his face tightening. "I'll speak to her," he promised, but his tone lacked conviction. It was clear Helen had woven a web of control around us, and Luke was ensnared. Desperate for some clarity, I began documenting every unreasonable demand and insult from Helen. I needed evidence to keep my sanity in check. The tension reached a boiling point a week later. Helen asked me to clean the entire house for a gathering of her friends. I spent hours scrubbing, dusting, and arranging, only to find out Helen had taken all the credit for my work. "Wonderful job, Helen. Your place looks immaculate," one of her friends said, casting a fleeting glance my way. Helen smiled graciously. "Thank you. It's a lot of effort, but worth it to keep a lovely home." My blood boiled. After they left, I approached Helen. "Why didn't you tell them I did the cleaning?" Helen's eyes narrowed. "You should be grateful you're here at all. Stop expecting praise for doing the basics." This was too much. When Luke came home, I confronted him. "We need to talk." "Not now, Aaron. I've had a long day," he sighed, brushing past me. "No, we talk now," I insisted, blocking his path. "You need to see what your mother's doing to us." "Aaron, enough," he exploded. "She's my mother. Stop making everything about you." His words were the last straw. "I can't live like this anymore, Luke. Either she goes or I do." Helen appeared at the door, her face a mask of innocence. "Is everything all right?" I looked between them, feeling utterly betrayed. "I'm leaving," I declared, my voice resolute, and with that I walked out, not looking back. I never thought I would return to the Bradley house, but fate had different plans. "Aaron, please. We need to talk," Luke had pleaded over the phone. Back in the mansion, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Helen's gaze was cold, calculating. Luke paced the living room, running his hands through his hair, clearly distraught. "Why did you want me here, Luke?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Look, I know things have been tough," he began, avoiding my eyes, "but I need you to understand the pressure I'm under, with Mom's health and the debts." "Debts?" I interrupted, my eyes narrowing. Helen shot Luke a look that could kill, but Luke continued, "Our finances aren't what they seemed. The accounts are in a mess, credit cards maxed out." "And you want me to help?" I said, incredulous. "After everything she's put me through?" Helen stood abruptly, her voice sharp. "You think you're so innocent, Aaron? You've been nothing but trouble. Always playing the victim." I felt a surge of anger. "Victim? You've undermined me at every turn, treated me like an outsider in my own home." Helen's lips curled into a sneer. "Poor Aaron, always the martyr. Why don't you just admit you're not cut out for this life? You're a burden, plain and simple." I took a step forward, determination hardening in my chest. "I'm done with this. I'm not here to bail you out. If you want to settle this, do it through a divorce." Luke's face crumpled. "Aaron, please, I love you. Can't we work something out?" Helen scoffed, her disdain palpable. "Don't be pathetic, Luke. She's always been after your money. Now she's just proving it." I turned to leave, but something in Luke's defeated posture stopped me. "I'm willing to settle things fairly," I said, my voice softer. "We can arrange a divorce agreement that clears the debts you've saddled me with, but I'm not your lifeline anymore." A week later, we met with our lawyers. Helen tried to play the innocent card, turning on the waterworks, but I had my documentation ready. Every unfair demand, every insult, every deceitful transaction in my name. As the details came to light, Helen's face turned pale. "This is preposterous," she shouted. "You can't prove any of this." My lawyer laid out the evidence calmly, efficiently. Helen's manipulative tactics, her financial abuses, they all painted a clear picture. Luke's lawyer looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Mrs. Bradley, I think it's best if you remain silent," he suggested. Luke was visibly shaken. "Mom, did you do all this?" Helen glared at him. "Don't act so surprised. We did what we had to for this family. She's the one trying to ruin us." Luke looked at me, his expression a mix of regret and sorrow. "Aaron, I never wanted it to come to this." "And yet, here we are," I said, my voice steady. "This is the only way to move forward." The divorce agreement was signed. Papers were exchanged. Helen was ordered to repay the debts incurred under my name, a sum that would take her years to settle. As we left the courtroom, Helen's proud facade cracked. "You think you've won?" she spat. "You'll regret this." "No, Helen," I replied, feeling a heavy weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm finally free." Returning home, I felt a sense of liberation. I began focusing on my career, pouring my energy into something that truly mattered. The toxic influence of Helen and the mess of my past faded with each passing day. It wasn't immediate, but gradually I rebuilt my life, meeting old friends, reconnecting with my family, finding joy in simple pleasures. Each step was a victory, a reclaiming of my spirit from the shadows that had once threatened to consume it. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. And I knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one defined by strength, resilience, and the knowledge that I would never again let anyone undermine my worth. It had been a few months since the divorce, and life had started to look up for me. My mentor, David Hargrove, had reached out with an unexpected offer over coffee one day. "Aaron, there's an opportunity at my startup. We could really use someone with your tenacity and drive." I agreed immediately. Throwing myself into work was a welcome distraction from the chaos that had been my marriage. David was a guiding force, helping me navigate the corporate landscape. His encouragement rekindled a fire within me. One evening, after a particularly successful meeting, David pulled me aside. "You have a sharp mind for this business. Ever thought about starting your own company?" The idea had crossed my mind before, but I always lacked the confidence. Now, with David's trust and my newfound freedom, it felt possible. "I have," I admitted, smiling. "Then do it," he said, his eyes gleaming. "I'll back you." I threw myself into the challenge. Late nights, early mornings, countless meetings. It was exhausting, but empowering. Within a year, my startup was not just surviving, it was thriving. We secured partnerships, expanded our client base, and soon I was running a successful company. One evening, while I was going through some paperwork, my phone buzzed. A message from a mutual friend, Jessica Clark. It read, "Heard about Helen's financial troubles. Seems she's dragging Luke down with her." I frowned, conflicted emotions swirling. Helen had reaped what she sowed, and Luke, part of me still cared for him, despite everything. Weeks later, I decided to buy a home in a picturesque city, bringing my parents to live with me. It felt right, providing for those who had supported me through thick and thin. At a housewarming party, Jessica approached me, holding a glass of champagne. "This place is amazing, Aaron. You've come a long way." "Thanks, Jessica. It's been a journey," I said, glancing at my parents who were now mingling happily with guests. "Have you heard about Luke and Helen?" she asked. "Only bits," I responded cautiously. "They're in deep trouble. Helen's debts are out of control, and Luke's struggling to keep up." I sighed, a mix of satisfaction and sorrow settling in. "I guess karma finally caught up." Jessica nodded. "You did what you had to. Don't feel guilty." As the evening wore on, I reflected on the journey, how I had risen from being undermined to reclaiming my worth and power. The sense of closure was profound. A few days later, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. I answered hesitantly, "Hello." "Aaron, it's Luke." I froze, surprised. "What do you want, Luke?" He hesitated. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. Mom's debts it's destroyed us. I shouldn't have let it go this far." His words hit me like a whirlwind of past pain and unspoken apologies. "You're right. You shouldn't have. But I've moved on, Luke. I support myself now, and I'm happy." "I understand," he said, voice heavy with regret. "Take care, Aaron." I hung up, staring out at the sunset from my backyard. The call felt like the final page of a chapter I had long since closed. I was determined to keep looking forward. Planning a well-deserved vacation with my parents, I felt lighter. We reminisced about old times, laughed, and enjoyed the evening together, knowing we had come a long way. The future looked bright, and I was ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. It was a quiet Saturday morning when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello?" "Aaron, it's Helen," a familiar, cold voice echoed through the line. I sat up straighter, caught off guard. "What do you want, Helen?" Her voice wavered, an unusual tone of desperation creeping in. "I need your help. Luke and we're in trouble, financially." I took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. Part of me felt satisfaction, but another part recognized the gravity of the situation. "Why should I help you after everything you've done to me?" "Please, Aaron," she pleaded, her usual arrogance stripped away. "We're desperate." I rubbed my temple, feeling the weight of my emotions. "Where do you want to meet?" An hour later, I found myself at a small, nondescript cafe. Helen and Luke were already seated, looking exhausted and defeated. Helen's eyes were bloodshot, and Luke's face was gaunt, a far cry from the confident man I once knew. "Aaron," Luke said quietly as I approached. I sat down, avoiding their gaze. "Talk," I demanded. Helen leaned forward, clasping her hands together. "We've maxed out all our credit cards. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. We're about to lose everything." I looked at Luke, searching for some sign of the man I married. "And what do you expect me to do? Bail you out?" Helen bristled. "You owe us." "I owe you nothing," I interrupted sharply. "You treated me like dirt. You manipulated, lied, and showed me nothing but contempt." Luke winced. "Aaron, please, we're sinking." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You know what? I'll make you an offer, but it's on my terms." Helen's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but she remained silent. "We settle this fairly," I continued. through a straightforward divorce agreement. No more debts on my name, and you, I pointed at Helen, pay back everything you owe me. Helen looked ready to protest, but Luke placed a hand on her arm. Agreed, he said, his voice cracking. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. Then I'm done here. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings with lawyers, signing documents, and tying up loose ends. The divorce agreement was clear. Helen would repay her debts to me, and I would have no more financial ties to the Bradleys. A week after the final papers were signed, I received a call from Helen. You think you've won, don't you? She spat through the phone. Mark my words, Aaron. You'll regret this. I sighed, feeling the last remnants of anger dissolve. Helen, I don't care about winning. I care about moving on. Goodbye. For the first time in years, I felt free. My life was no longer entangled in their toxic web. Back at home, I poured a glass of wine and stepped out onto my balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The future felt wide open, full of possibilities. Mom walked out to join me, a warm smile on her face. You've come so far, Aaron. I'm proud of you. I hugged her tightly. Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. We stood there in silence, the cool evening air wrapping around us, a peaceful end to a tumultuous chapter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace, ready for whatever came next. Stepping into the courthouse for the divorce proceedings felt like entering the lion's den. Helen was already there, flanked by her lawyer, her face a mask of resentment. Luke stood nearby, looking more like a ghost than a man. Aaron, he greeted with a weak nod, avoiding my eyes. I kept my gaze steady. Let's get this over with. The hearing was straightforward. My lawyer presented the evidence. Helen's manipulative tactics, her hidden debts, and the financial transactions under my name. Helen shrank under the scrutiny, her carefully constructed facade crumbling bit by bit. As we neared the end of the hearing, my lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to call attention to the financial abuses perpetrated by Mrs. Bradley. These documents clearly show her reckless spending and deceitful actions. Helen's lawyer looked frantic. Your Honor, we object to the characterization of my client as deceitful. She acted in what she believed was the best interest of her family. I leaned over to my lawyer and whispered, I need to speak. He nodded, rising to address the judge. Your Honor, my client, Aaron Parker, wishes to make a statement. The judge motioned for me to proceed. I stood, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Your Honor, my time with the Bradleys was dominated by manipulation and deceit. Helen Bradley undermined me at every turn, placing debts under my name without my consent. This divorce isn't just about ending a marriage. It's about reclaiming my life and my financial independence. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Helen's face was a mix of anger and desperation, but she remained silent. The judge cleared his throat. Given the evidence presented, it's clear that Mrs. Helen Bradley engaged in financially abusive behavior. The court orders that all debts incurred in Aaron Parker's name be transferred back to Helen Bradley. Furthermore, Helen Bradley is to repay Aaron Parker for the financial damages and emotional distress caused. I allowed myself a small sigh of relief. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. The judge banged his gavel, signaling the end of the hearing. Luke approached me, his eyes filled with regret. Aaron, I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it had gotten. Sorry? Your blindness and loyalty to your mother cost me dearly, Luke. This isn't just on her, it's on you too. He nodded, tears welling up. I know, I'm paying for it now. Helen stormed past us, her lawyer struggling to keep up. This isn't over, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. For me, it is, I replied coolly. Leaving the courthouse, I felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders. It was finally over. My lawyer patted my shoulder. You handled that well, Aaron. Thanks, I replied. I couldn't have done it without your support. Back at home, I was greeted by my parents' proud faces. How did it go? My father asked, hugging me tightly. It's done, I said, my voice filled with relief. Helen has to repay everything, and I'm free. That evening, I celebrated with close friends and family. As we toasted to new beginnings, I felt a surge of hope and optimism for the future. This ordeal had tested my strength, but it had also revealed a resilience I didn't know I possessed. The following weeks, I ensured that all financial matters were appropriately transferred back. Helen's fall from grace was swift and public. Friends and family cut ties with her, but her deceit now laid bare for all to see. Meanwhile, I immersed myself in my growing business, the sense of freedom and accomplishment driving me forward. With the past firmly behind me, I looked ahead with renewed vigor, ready to embrace the opportunities and challenges that lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, the future felt bright and boundless, a testament to my journey from being undermined to reclaiming my worth and power. A year later, on a warm spring morning, I found myself sitting in my office, basking in the sunlight pouring through the windows. I had just wrapped up a successful meeting when my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. "Aaron, have you heard the latest about Helen?" Her voice crackled over the line. I leaned back in my chair, curiosity piqued. "No, what's happened now?" "She's hit rock bottom. Apparently she lost the house, and Luke's barely scraping by." A mixture of emotions swirled within me, but I settled on a calm acceptance. "Well, karma has a funny way of catching up, doesn't it? You've come so far, Aaron. I'm so proud of you," Jessica said warmly. "Thanks, Jess. It hasn't been easy, but I'm finally in a good place." After hanging up, I walked over to the window, looking out at the vibrant city below. The trials and tribulations of the past seemed like a distant memory now. I was thriving, both personally and professionally. That evening, I hosted a small get-together at my new home. My parents were there, along with close friends like Jessica. As we gathered around the dining table, laughter and chatter filled the room. "To new beginnings," my father said, raising his glass. "To resilience and redemption," I added, clinking my glass with the others. The next day, I decided to take a much-deserved vacation with my parents. We planned to visit a quaint seaside town, a place I'd always dreamed of seeing. The anticipation filled me with a childlike excitement. On the day of our departure, as I packed the last of our bags, my mother walked in, a proud smile on her face. "I can't tell you how happy I am to see you like this, Aaron. You're a true inspiration." I hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Mom. I couldn't have done it without your love and support." As we drove to the airport, I reflected on the journey I had been on. From the oppressive days in Helen's shadow to standing tall and reclaiming my life, it felt like stepping out of darkness into the light. The seaside town was more beautiful than I had imagined. We spent our days exploring the beach, enjoying fresh seafood, and simply savoring each other's company. One evening, as we walked along the shoreline, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I felt a profound sense of peace. "Aaron, remember this moment," my father said, his arm around my shoulders. "You've earned it." "I will, Dad," I promised, feeling the waves lap at my feet. Back at home after our trip, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Luke. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. "Aaron, I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to take a moment to apologize once more for everything. Losing everything has made me realize the immense mistakes I made. I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I now understand what you went through. I wish you all the best. Luke?" I folded the letter and put it away, feeling a strange sense of closure. The acknowledgement of his wrongdoings was enough for me. With each passing day, life continued to bloom with new opportunities and meaningful connections. I reconnected with old friends, built stronger family bonds, and thrived in my business. As I planned the next adventure with my parents, I realized that this journey wasn't just about overcoming obstacles. It was about finding joy, peace, and fulfillment. And in that moment, I knew I had not only reclaimed my worth, but had also discovered the profound strength within me to create a life of my own design.